So wait, Peter, you're recording, right?
Yes.
Okay, so then I don't have to do it. We're good.
Okay, so we're all set, Joyce?
No, it's still loading.
Okay.
I'll be done in 1 sec. Let me make sure that, let me verify it's actually playing.
Okay, so we're all set, Joyce?
Give me 1 second. No, it's starting to load now. No, it's still loading.
Okay.
I'll be done in 1 sec. Let me make sure that, let me verify it's actually playing. All right, the live is there now. So yeah, I'm gonna pass the baton back to you.
Okay. So we're all set, Joyce?
Yeah, let me just make sure. Now, no, it's still.
Doesn't sound too good.
No.
Right. You're gonna have to mute the YouTube player. Yeah, all right. Pass the baton back to you.
Okay. So we're all set, Joyce?
Yeah, let me just make sure.
Doesn't sound too good.
Yeah,
Doesn't sound too good.
All right, I muted it now. I had it playing in the background to make sure that it was working.
Okay, so we're all live now?
You're live.
Okay, so good evening, everybody. My name is Peter Stecker. It's 7:02 p.m. This is the Westchester County Rent Guidelines Board public hearing for June 3rd, 2020. Preliminarily, I'm going to read a note that was starting the public notice for this public hearing. It goes, in response to the governor's directive to take every effort to keep New Yorkers safe and mitigate the spread of COVID-19, and pursuant to Executive Order 202-1, which allows for the suspension of the Public Officers Law, the Westchester County Rent Guidelines Board will be conducting public hearings to set guideline rates of rent adjustments for housing accommodation within its jurisdiction, subject to the Emergency Tenant Protection Act of 1974. For leases commencing between October 1st, 2020 and September 30th, 2021 via teleconference. Instructions for members of the public to simultaneously view or listen to the meetings will be posted to the HCR's website for the Office of Rent Administration under the public hearing section prior to the meetings. The hearings will also later be transcribed and the public will have the ability to view the transcripts. So at this point, I will pass it over to Chair Elsa Rubin to call the roll.
Good evening. My name is Elsa Rubin, Chair of the Westchester Rent Guidelines. I welcome you to this virtual meeting made possible by the extraordinary efforts of the staff of the Division of Housing and Community Renewal. They have worked so hard to keep us going and running with this presentation and with these meetings. And I want to thank each and every one of them by name: our counsel, Peter Stecker, Deputy Commissioner Woody Pascal, Cheryl Berdard, you saw her recent, and Toys Francis, he was there on the screen, as well as Michael Guttentag, James Ferrara, and April Gray Huertas. Peter, have I forgotten anyone?
Well, now I hope I don't forget anyone, but that sounds like the team. It's been a collaborative effort, and thankfully it seems like it's going well so far. So we'll see how it goes throughout the evening. So
yes,
I guess at this point, if you want to call the roll,
Yes, before I do that, I want to also thank the members of the board who have cooperated and have been very flexible during all this challenging period. I also want to, I think that I speak on behalf of all the members of the board to thank all the staff and the staff of the hospitals and the essential workers who have made it possible for us to have food and to have all necessities, and for the staff of hospitals and in other places that have care for the needy. Our gratitude is immense. This is the first public meeting of the Westchester Rent Guidelines Board in a series of meetings and public hearings to determine guideline rates of rent adjustments for leases commencing or being renewed between October 1st, 2020 and September 30th, 2021. I will now call roll, and please respond if you are present. Belen Aqua, public member.
Present.
Lamont Badreau, public member. Lamont,
Is muted.
Sorry about that.
muted. Do I hear present?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, good. Yes, now we can hear you. Eddie Mae Burns, public member.
Present.
Elliot Cherson, owner representative.
Present.
Kenneth Finger, owner representative.
I'm here.
Evelyn Santiago, public member.
Present.
Tamara Stewart, tenant representative.
Present.
And I'm Elsa Rubin, public member. Let the record show that we have quorum. And now I will pass it on to you, Peter, in case you have any announcements.
Okay, first I'm going to pass it over to Sherelle Bedard, who's an attorney with DHCR, who's going to make some comments.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sherelle Bedard, counsel at the Office of Rent Administration. And on behalf of the Deputy Commissioner Woody Pascal and ORA, I would like to thank you all for assisting with the governor's initiative to stop the spread. This year, all of our meetings will be held via Zoom and can be viewed on YouTube through our live stream channel for the Westchester County Rent Guidelines Board. You may access the channel by going to ORA's page at hcr.ny.gov/RGB-hearings. Thank you, Peter. You can continue.
Okay, thank you, Sherelle. So the only announcement that I really have is I'd like to just go through and remind everyone what our meeting schedule is, which is in the public notice that was issued a few weeks ago. So the first public hearing is tonight. It's June 3rd at 7 o'clock. The next public hearing will be on Tuesday, June 9th, 2020 at 7. Then there's a research and analysis presentation meeting Thursday, June 11th at 7 o'clock. There will be no public comments for that meeting. Then there's a third public hearing on Monday, June 15th at 7 o'clock. Then there's a presentation meeting by the tenant and owner representatives currently scheduled for Tuesday, June 16th, 2020. And finally, there's a rebuttal meeting and a vote meeting for the rebuttal presentation to the tenant and owner representatives and for a vote on the guidelines currently scheduled for Tuesday, June 23rd, 2020. And
It's
as
fine.
Sherelle-
Don't turn
as-
it back on.
As
Don't turn it
Sherelle
back-
mentioned, all of these meetings will be via Zoom, and the public hearings will proceed as this public hearing proceeded with the signups beforehand to Westchester County RGB at nyshcr.org. Again, all the information can be found on the HCR website. So Elsa, that's really the only announcement that I had to make.
Okay. At this moment, I would like to call the people who have signed up to speak. I will call the speakers in the order in which they were, I think, the order they were signed up for the meetings. The speaking addressing the board will have 3 minutes for individuals and 5 minutes for persons representing entities or organizations. I also would like to mention that due to the fact that we only have 3 persons presenting testimony, I want to encourage anybody who's watching on YouTube to, if they want to address the board, to please send an email to our counsel, Peter Stecker, and if possible, we will try to accommodate you. His email address is peter.stecker@nyschr.org. I'll repeat, Peter, P-E-T-E-R .STECKER @nyschr.org. So if anybody is interested in participating at this point, they can send him an email. He will be checking his emails and we will try to put you in. I'm going to, at this point, call Elaine Gosso, representing landlords. She will have 3 minutes. And I guess, Peter, you will be keeping track of the time?
Yes, I'll keep track of the time. However, Ms. Guzzo has not signed into the Zoom as of yet. So I don't know if you want to.
In that case, I will call Alan
I
Zaretsky,
think, Madam Chair,
representing the landlords.
Yes, so Mr. Zaretsky is here. So what I will do is I will promote him to a panelist for his time period so that he can address the board.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you, I can't see you.
Yes.
See my name?
True.
Yeah, we can see your name, but
Okay.
not your, and we can hear you, but
If
we
you can
can't
hear me,
see
that's
you.
probably better. I've been staying home and I'm a little late up here, so I just tore my ACL this morning, so perhaps it's better you don't see my face. May I start, even though you can't see my face?
Sure.
Good.
First of all, I'd like to thank the Rent Guidelines Board for taking the perspectives of property owners into account in a very difficult and trying year for everybody. My name is Alan Zaretsky. I'm a second-generation owner, and both of my adult sons work with me in managing our portfolio of properties located in White Plains and Yonkers. As my father built each of the properties we own and operate, we take great pride in their maintenance and know the vast majority of our approximately 1,000 residential tenants by first name. Our main office is located in Yonkers in one of the buildings we own, and as such, we are constantly in touch with our residents as well as the conditions of all of our properties. We employ numerous union employees on site and a complete staff of office and maintenance personnel in order to maintain and service our residents and maintain our properties. Our site personnel have done an unbelievable job during the pandemic in providing the additional care and maintenance required due to the extenuating circumstances. As responsible owners, we have provided all of the necessary masks, gloves, cleaning materials, and coverage so that our staff can provide the best safety to our residents as well as assist them when necessary, inclusive of personal shopping, laundry, and other individual needs. Our many long-employed staff do not have to be asked twice to step up to the plate during this crisis. Local 32BJ, the union representing these employees, is requesting additional pay called essential pay for this work performed by union employees, which has not been publicized to very much great extent. These additional costs, which are necessary for the safety of all, currently are borne solely by the landlords providing these services. These additional costs coming on top of the HSTPA legislation only add salt to the wound of reduced income in an ever-increasing cost market. The cost of fuel, always volatile, has been drastically affected by the requirement to use either number 2 oil, which has been fluctuating recently all over the place with a 20 to 25 cent swing on any given day, which is more expensive than number 4 or 6, or to switch to gas, where it's available from Con Edison. In our case, after spending large sums of money switching to the government preferred gas, again, where available, we are at the mercy of Con Edison, who has a monopoly on the transportation of the gas costs, regardless of where it is purchased. Con Ed has increased the transportation charges by up to 3 times prior costs in the last year and a half. Additionally, the loss of the IMCI increases, the current regulation allowance is de minimis in nature, drastically affects long-term owners like us.
3 minutes.
Who have many long-standing tenants paying well below market rent. When these tenants move out on their own volition, we are often stuck with large expenditures to renovate these apartments with no realistic payback of the capital expenditures, regardless of cost, size of the apartment, conditions of the apartment, damages, etc. The result is families not being able to move into newly renovated apartments, which in most cases under the old law would still be below market rents. Instead, they may find a cheap apartment with old appliances, cabinets, countertops, bathroom fixtures, lights, hardware, etc. This also adds to the decline, especially of older buildings, which require more maintenance and care, as similar changes were made to the MCI improvements as well. Furthermore, the new regulations pertaining to non-payment eviction actions virtually make it impossible to remove non-paying or disruptive tenants from the premises, even before the understandable moratorium currently in effect due to the coronavirus. Additionally, there is no reason for a tenant to respond to mandated renewal notices, despite the legal requirement to do so, as there is no teeth to noncompliance. Currently, we have several cases, which Mr. Finger is aware of, wherein the tenant now claimed that as their lease expired, because they did not respond to the notices, that they are now month-to-month tenants with no increase in rent, and only they can terminate their lease. While it is possible we may eventually prevail in court, at what additional cost? And the reality is that the tenant will just vacate when it suits them, probably because the case could even be decided, forcing some sort of collection action to commence at yet additional costs with no guarantee of collection.
Mr. Serensky, I'm sorry, but your
I
time
have
expired.
three more sentences, okay, if I may. Penalize the bad landlord, we're all for that, and the bad tenant. Anyone with a sense of fairness can see that to treat one group different than another based on what is offered a perceived economics is simply unfair. What has been lost is the fact that landlords and tenants are in this together, and it need not be an adversarial situation. Do not pit us one against the other. Most landlords and tenants are good people who just want to be treated fairly. That is all we are asking, to be treated fairly. Thank you and stay safe.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board members?
I have a question. Mr. Zaretsky, have you been able to renovate apartments when they are vacated?
Under the new law that came into effect, no, it makes absolutely no economic sense to do so.
So what happens when you re-rent? The tenant gets a new tenant gets an old apartment?
What we do is we paint the apartment, we make sure everything's in working order, so it is in livable space certainly, but it's old appliances, it's older refrigerators that are not as necessarily as economically feasible for the tenant. They have older lights, old fixtures, old bathroom fixtures, and the floors aren't refinished, notwithstanding the fact that they're supposed to put carpeting in. It just is not as a desirable an apartment. And they are older because most of our properties, as I said, my father built them. He built them in the 60s.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
Sure.
sir.
Oh,
Go
thank
ahead.
you. Mr. Zaretsky, can you explain to the members of the board, I think Ken Finger and I understand a lot of the reasoning, rationale behind it, but if you could explain to the board why it is not beneficial or reasonable or whatever to renovate the apartment. What is the reason for that? Explain it, please.
First of all, in many cases, smaller landlords simply don't have the funds to do it. It used to be that you could go to a bank, you could go to get a loan, and with the additional income that you were getting, the banks would lend you this money on short term, and you would break even over the first 5-6 years or so. Under the current situation, the way that they have changed the payback on it, you really never even get your money back if you factor in the current cost of money, assuming that you have the money to do it in the first place. And again, many of the smaller landlords don't. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it does. I think it does. So, I mean, so before the new law was
Excuse me, the
passed,
same
you
thing
would,
applies, the same
Alan,
thing applies
before,
to the major capital improvements, which, it's a much bigger number. And the banks, you just can't, they won't lend you the money because there's no way to pay it back under the current economics of the buildings.
right, you were talking about the actual apartments. How does it affect the public areas of the building, the common areas of the building, et cetera?
Well, by law, we have to paint a certain certain number of years. But again, unless something needs to be done, it's a hazard or it's a health situation, and you have the money, the landlords are just not doing it. They're doing only what they have to do to keep the properties operating properly and safe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any
Thank you
other
very much.
questions?
Everybody be safe, well, stay smart and stay healthy.
Take
Thank you
care.
very much. Thank
Thank
you. Peter, do we have Elaine Gossa?
She
Or
hasn't come on as of yet.
She has, okay. So I'm gonna call Carol Dazinger. Is she,
Yes, she's waiting. I'm
she's
promoting her
waiting?
to panelist now. Yep.
Yeah.
Should be able to hear her now. Miss Danziger?
Oh, I see your name.
Maybe she's muted. I don't know.
Is she muted, Peter?
She's unmuted, so we should be able to hear her. Let's ask to start the video.
She disappeared.
It shows like she's muted.
She's not listed anymore.
Her name, no.
Oh, there she,
That's she.
oh, there she
There
is.
we go.
Hi, Carol.
She's muted though.
Oh,
There
we
we go.
can't hear you, Carol.
She's not
Oh.
muted. No.
Nope, she's good now.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
yes,
Yes.
yes.
You're good. Oh, good. I'm so glad. I'm sorry, I had to relaunch it.
Okay.
My name's Carol Danziger. I am also a second generation owner. I have an 18-unit building in Mamaroneck. I just want to say first, it's nice to see everybody here and healthy and well, and let's all stay that way.
Carol?
yes.
Woman, I just have to say that Carol represents the Apartment Owners Advisory Council, so she has 5 minutes.
Oh, I don't even think I'll need 5 minutes, but thank you for that.
Good.
Okay. I just want to say that for pretty much decades now, I've watched as the state and the board pass legislation and guidelines that have pretty much stifled the ability of small apartment owners to run their buildings properly while trying to remain cash positive, which is the right of every small business owner. After last year's legislative changes, we honestly don't know if we'll be able to keep our property well into the future. And just when we thought things couldn't get any worse after last year's changes, COVID-19 has now arrived. This year, we find ourselves just trying to survive. We now live every day fearful for the health and safety of our families and our loved ones. And after the financial hardships and unimaginable personal losses we have experienced, I still have to come here and ask for your consideration. As an owner of a family-run building, I am here for my tenants if the needs arise, especially if anyone is struggling during COVID-19. We have been very fortunate that most of our tenants did not need any accommodation, but some of them did. We also understand that there are others who have need, and we're asking to please allow the county, state, and federal government to respond to those needs and to the needs, sorry about that, and to the needs of the pandemic through the stimulus payments, unemployment payments, grants, and loans that are all potentially available to individuals. We also know that recovery is going to be a process, but as restrictions are lifted and businesses reopen, which has already begun, the immediate need will come to an end. Whereas your decisions now will potentially last up to 2 years for an apartment owner. Many of us small building owners are unable to get relief under the CARES Act and other programs because we don't have staff. We basically do everything ourselves. Many small business owners have had properties passed down from their parents and do not have mortgages, so we have no relief there. Basically, no one is helping us. Our taxes, our insurance, utilities all need to be paid, and all those expenses just keep going up. Not to mention the increased costs some of the owners, as you just heard, have incurred related to the cleaning and disinfecting during COVID-19. Passing guidelines, which seem to be primarily based on testimonies of renters that are having difficulty paying their rent year after year, and especially now during the pandemic, it does not seem to be fair. We are also trying to pay our bills and keep food on our tables. God willing, many of us, including myself, work full-time jobs to support our families that have nothing to do with the properties we own, just like many of our tenants do. We are not corporations. We are people. We are mothers, fathers, grandparents, sons, daughters, just like our tenants. Our families are struggling just like everyone else is here tonight. Please don't make it impossible for us to continue to stay in business and provide for our families and our tenants. Please pass reasonable guideline increases to help handle our ever-increasing costs. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Assinger.
Thank
Any
you.
questions for Ms. Assinger? No?
Ken Finger.
Go ahead, Ken.
I'm sorry, I muted myself. Ms. Danziger, thank you for the comments. Where do you live in your building?
Yes, I do. My husband and I live in the building with
And
our
who-
tenants we have for probably the last 8 years.
And who maintains your building?
We do, my siblings and myself. My brother does most of the maintenance. We also have tenants that are able to do repairs that we pay them to do that. We don't actually have a staff. Obviously, like large plumbing jobs and electrical jobs, we have to contract out to local contractors to do.
Have you run into additional expenses because of the pandemic?
Well, I mean, just some supplies, but not, nothing significant. It's just the regular year-to-year expenses for us that are what's challenging the most.
Good, thank you.
Hi, Ms.
Anybody
Danziger.
else?
Elliot,
Yes?
I'm muted. Hi, thank you. Ms. Danziger, have you been affected by the new rent laws that were passed last June? And if so, how?
Well, yeah, I mean, the new rent laws, we have a lot of long-term tenants. We have a lot of apartments that have rents that are extremely low. when I mean long-term tenants, we've had tenants that have been there since the 60s. And so the rents are extremely low. And now there's no way to raise those rents once those tenants move on.
And how does,
You know,
what does
so
that mean as
That's
far
very
as,
difficult. Our rents are very low.
so am I correct that if a tenant has been there since the 60s,
Mhm.
and I'm just picking a number out of the air, is paying now $750 a month,
Mhm.
and they move out, vacate, that the new tenant will basically be paying $750.
Yeah, I have two
What's a little
units
bit
that
different?
I have two units that are at 550 and 603.
So the rents for those new tenants will be the same. And how big are those apartments that you're talking about?
A 1-bedroom and a 2-bedroom.
Thank you very much.
It's hard to look at. It really is. It's very difficult, especially when your margins are so thin.
Anybody else? Thank you, Mr. Arcangel.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hop off.
Is that it, Elsa?
Peter, is Eileen Gusso on?
She is not on.
No. And did anybody else, did you receive any other emails or requests to participate?
Just give me one second. No, I didn't receive any other requests. What you can do if you want is you can read Ms. Guzzo's written statements into the record if you'd like. And we also got a statement from a tenant in Mount Vernon if you'd like to read those into the record as well. And there is one individual attendee here who I'm not sure who that is exactly.
Okay, I'm gonna read the statement from Eileen Gusso. Hello, board members. Please respectfully understand that a rollback of a zero increase on rents signifies that you will place poor communities in Yonkers in poorer living conditions. As landlords, we rely on small increases to keep up with break fixes and updating rentals. Without increases, landlords are not able to keep up with the horrific situation impact presented by COVID-19. Most of us collecting less than 50% rents, unable to fulfill monthly obligations. Rest assured, your board has a big decision to make that will impact the poor communities very negatively without proper percentage rent increases. The board also has to understand about our horror stories and the difficulties we face due to COVID-19. We don't have anyone backing us. Renters are allowed to not pay rent for 3 months. Meanwhile, landlords are supposed to pay monthly expenses, provide heat, water, etc. Rick fixes, I guess she means fixes and mortgages regardless. Please, where does the board and the government expect landlords to draw funds from? I would like to please be included in the call hearing June 3rd and post questions. Thanks. And you said there was somebody else,
Yes,
Peter?
I sent it just before the meeting. I don't know if you have a copy of it.
No, I don't. Can you read it, please?
Sure, let me just pull it up real quick. Okay, this is a message from Yvonne Fay. It says, due to the pandemic and people losing jobs, the rent should not be an issue for people. We have been paying an exorbitant amount of rent in the past and cannot afford an increase at this time. Ms. Fay is a tenant at 30 Park Avenue in Mount Vernon, New York.
Okay. Any questions, anybody?
That it, Madam Chairperson?
Yes, sir.
Well, I move to adjourn then to the next hearing.
I would like to make a motion about changing our schedule prior to adjournment.
What is the motion that you want to make, Tamara?
I would like to make a motion that we change the date of our Monday, June 15th hearing to Thursday, June 18th, and we change the date of our presentations from Tuesday, June 16th to Monday, June 22nd.
Ken had the first motion, which I will second.
Wait a minute.
Right.
It's-
Yeah.
We have to,
To adjourn.
I want to bring this motion of Tamara to the consideration of the board. Personally, I think that everything has been set. People had their schedule set already, and it will be very difficult to change. But if the board wants to consider that motion, we will do it.
Can you give me the dates again, please?
Sure. Changing a public hearing from Monday, June the 15th to Thursday, June the 18th to accommodate additional governmental data that will not be available until the 17th, which is the National Low Income Housing Coalition Annual Report, which should give us some very current data on what's happening with housing. And then the second change is the presentations from Tuesday, June the 16th to Monday, June the 22nd. And then we would still have our vote on Tuesday, June the 23rd.
So I just have to explain one thing about the June 18th. If the board were to decide to move that meeting from June 15th to June 18th, it does conflict with a Rockland County public hearing. So that meeting would need to be moved to a different platform. It would be moved to WebEx, which, at this point, the problem with the WebEx would be that we don't have the capability at the moment of, the YouTube live stream. So that could present an issue with that. So that's just one thing to keep in mind.
Yes, and I'm sorry, Elliot. I believe Woody has, the deputy commissioner is online, so he has something that he would like to say. So we're gonna open up the line for him really quickly. Deputy Commissioner,
He's
he's
muted.
muted, right? So we're gonna ask him to unmute.
It's not often we can mute a deputy commissioner.
I know, right?
That's power, right?
Hey, only for a minute. Let's see. I don't know. I'm asking him to unmute, so.
There he
Hello,
is.
everyone. There he is.
I think I'm here. Good
Yes.
evening, everyone. First, I
Hi,
want to
Woody.
say thank you.
Good evening.
Hello, everyone. I want to say thank you for all of the work that
Hi.
you'll continue to do for us and for the people of Westchester County. As Peter just said, there are some conflicts with changing the dates now because we're kind of locked in, and we want to ensure that the public is involved and engaged as much as we can. Peter, do you have the dates in front of you? Because I don't have the dates in front of me.
For Rockland County?
Yes.
I don't have, Sherelle, do you have that information? I don't
Yes,
have
so Rockland County is June 18th, June 24th, and June 25th.
Tamara, do you have any other dates that you're looking at or could potentially propose?
I was more than willing to go into the later part of the month when we actually had our scheduling meeting back in February. And I believe it was Mr. Finger that said that he had no availability after the 23rd because of other meetings that he had, which
wasn't me.
limited us as a result of his saying that he wasn't available after the 23rd, which is why we ended up having to push everything back. I would be happy to extend into the next week and even, right up until the end of the month.
That is not true. It wasn't me. I had some conflicts. I did have some dates that were available.
Can I also say that, Tamara, I believe if my memory is correct, you proposed the 22nd, June 22nd, back in February, and I mentioned back then that I have a conflict on the 22nd, and I still do. So that date is unavailable to me, and that's why I believe we were trying to accommodate everybody with dates that were acceptable, and that was a date that was not picked.
Mr. Finger, which dates are you available beyond the 23rd, sir?
I don't know because I had my calendar set for these dates back in February. I worked everything else around these dates for the rest of the month. I don't have a calendar right here now. I frankly think that we have published these dates, and to have the public participate, I think people do make their calendars. I think we should honor them. The fact that you don't have a national figure, I think we all know what's going on nationally.
I have a question. Have the dates been indeed published to the public for their participation?
Yes,
Yes.
they're in the website.
Thank you.
So is it Peter, is it too late to change it? Because they already been published and there's so little time between now and these proposed changes?
Well, it would take some gymnastics. We would have to republish the notice. But it technically can be done, but it's something that if it's going to be done, it needs to, I need to know soon so that, the public notice can be republished. But it's already been published. We're, taking requests from people to speak at the public hearings, but I'm not aware of any limitation timeline-wise that would stop these particular changes.
I do have a point of order. I would like to point out that Ms. Stewart's motion has not been seconded. Without a second, there shouldn't be any discussion.
Correct.
I would also like to point out that we have met with a number of our landlords, at least I believe a dozen or so, who have already set their calendar to speak on the last hearing date, I think on 15th. And it would be extremely unfair to those that have already set their calendar to speak to change the date at this late date.
Again, without a second, I don't think we should even be discussing it.
I'll second
Well,
it.
Well, that takes
It's
care of
just-
that, Lamont. Okay.
Well,
Thank you, Lamont.
Okay, so in this case, since the motion was presented and Lamont seconded, we are going to submit it for vote. And Peter, can you please call the vote?
Just, I can, Madam Chair, I just want to confirm what the dates are and just reiterate that.
Okay,
The motion, Tamara, as I understand it, is from moving the public hearing from June 15th to June 18th and moving the presentation meeting from June 16th through June 22nd.
correct.
What-
And could you give the reason?
What days of the week is that?
Do the count.
May
18th is a Thursday, 22nd is a Monday.
Correct. With regard to the reason that I have made this request, I do understand that we set our calendar 4 months ago. And since that last meeting, our county, state, country, and the world have experienced some monumental changes. More than 1.8 million of our fellow citizens have contracted COVID-19. More than 100,000 people have died. more than 40 million people have lost jobs. Classrooms are empty. Tens of millions of people are relying on food banks to feed their families. And worldwide protests against injustice have replaced the coronavirus pandemic in the news headlines. So the environment that we're making this decision in now is a very different environment than the one that we agreed to have some meeting dates back in February. And I do believe that it's important to have as much current data that reflects the current conditions of what's going on. I know anecdotally from what I'm hearing from people all over the county, from tenants, about the despair that a lot of people are experiencing. And while anecdotally they're welcome to come and testify to that, our decision is supposed to be based on data, and not just the data that we get from the statisticians next week, but all available data that is relevant to the decision that we're making. And all I'm trying to do is to have us have a few more days so that relevant, timely data can be provided to this body so that it can better inform the decision that we're embarking upon.
Okay. Quick comment. Elsa?
Yes.
Nobody could dispute, Tamara, that the world has changed. I mean, it's obvious. But we all do have schedules. We have businesses, we have jobs, we have family matters. And the whole purpose of picking these dates in February, which is way in advance of June, is so that, I'm speaking for myself, is so I clear my calendar to make sure that I don't put anything on for that date. And I voiced my problem back then with the 22nd, for example, and I still have the problem with the 22nd. So given those circumstances, I understand your points. However, there's a practical side to all of this, as Mr. Finger pointed out. And it's not just the 8 of us, plus Peter and the other people from the division. These things have been set, and changing it at this last minute, literally 2 weeks from now or less, I think is a very unfair burden to place on everybody.
With all due respect, Elliot, there are a lot of circumstances that have been occurring as of late that have placed a tremendous burden on all of us. And
no doubt.
sometimes that just is the way things are.
Yeah, but we have all our speakers set for certain days, and they've done that. It's just totally unfair to put everybody that set their calendar and said that they're going to speak on that day. And I think Peter may have the list already, or Elsa may have the list. But I was on a Zoom with them this afternoon. There's at least a dozen people, I believe, that have set the date on the 15th, which I think is the third hearing, to speak. And if they're denied their right to speak because we changed our date at this last date, I think it's just extremely unfair. It's difficult enough to start with getting people to talk. Anyway, I don't want to repeat myself. Let's call for a vote on it, and let's move on.
Peter?
Joe, do you want me to call the roll?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Ken Finger,
No.
Elliot Cherson,
No.
Tamara Stewart,
Yes.
Valine Aqua,
Yes.
Lamont Badru, Lamont,
Yes.
Eddie Mae Barnes,
It's a little difficult. Oh, boy. No.
Evelyn Santiago,
No.
Elsa Rubin.
No.
Okay, so the motion fails. 3 votes in favor, 5 votes against.
Thank you. I think that concludes our meeting. Our next meeting will be on Tuesday, June 19th. Also a virtual meeting.
Ninth,
Tuesday, June 9th.
ninth.
Ninth.
Ninth,
Oh,
not the
yes,
19th.
I need my glasses. In the meantime, I wish everybody to be safe and healthy, and please take care of yourselves.
Be safe, everyone.
Thank
So
you.
everybody.
Thank
Good
you,
night,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good
Thank you.
night.
Good night.
Bye.
Be safe.
How do I leave?
Yeah.
Here we go. Leave, leave.
Joyce, do I just end it to end the YouTube?
Yep. You just click on more and then you stop live stream.